that Members' Day is brought further into disrepute.
I call the Honourable Member Peseta Sam Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Malo Soifua. I rise to take a call on this bill. And sir, may I start off by saying that we on this side of the House do not support this bill. And the main reason we do not support this bill is it is again a sad reminder that the opposition would rather create new problems by advancing needless legislation rather than fixing a problem with our existing legislation. Sir, and the purpose of the bill, as has already been outlined by the mover of the bill, is that it encourages casinos to implement best practice and systems to detect and prohibit problem gamblers and money launderers, sir. But what are the problems with the bill? And I'm going to support my colleague, Mr. Young, and say that it doesn't appear to achieve its aims of encouraging this. There is no reason why, sir, currently a casino that knowingly profits from significant criminal activity cannot be the subject of a profit forfeiture order under the current legislation. The bill effectively imposes a lower threshold of liability on casinos who should have known, compared with other persons who knowingly commit these acts. And that is imposing the lower test of constructive knowledge, as my learned colleague across the chamber said, as opposed to that more rigorous test of actual knowledge, sir, and I don't, like my colleague, agree with that. Sir, there is no clear evidence that casinos currently are not taking reasonable care to detect problem gambling and criminal activity, and certainly Ms Toure has not presented any evidence tonight. So you might want to ask what is in place currently to address this issue, sir. You might want to. And currently, as my colleague stated, Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Financing of Terrorism Act 2009 already puts in place obligations on casinos to detect and deter money laundering. It also has enforcement mechanisms that will achieve much of what this bill is trying to do. The Act will come into force in 2013, as my colleague said, and under the Act, reporting entities, including casinos, must put in place a program that consists of risk-based systems, processes and controls to detect and deter money laundering. For example, casinos must assess their money laundering risks, implement anti-money laundering programs that are proportionate to that risk assessment. Now, given the nature, the scale and complexities associated with casinos, the expectations obviously on them will be large. They also must undertake more robust customer due diligence measures, monitor large or unusual transactions, and keep a record of transactions that are larger than $6,000. And sir, they must also, and the Minister here will be happy with this, they must also report suspicious transactions to the police. So the Act contains enforcement mechanisms that are more targeted and more effective than the proposed amendment. And these include, of course, an entity that fails to comply with the Act's requirements commits a civil liability act, and a supervisor may issue a formal warning or accept an enforceable undertaking. A court may enforce that undertaking, issue an injunction, or order an entity to pay a pecuniary penalty to the Crown of up to $2 million on the civil standard of proof. And Mr Chevelle might ask, why not send it to Select Committee? And I say to Mr Chevelle, if you read the legislation, read the Act against this bill, you will realise that this bill is superfluous, sir. It is. The Act also has checks in place to ensure that it is working as it should do. Implementation of the regime will provide evidence of whether casinos are taking reasonable steps to detect money laundering and clarify whether any amendments are required. Under casino licensing conditions, of course, we know that they specify that the Gambling Commission is required to review each casino's host responsibility programs every 2 years. Sir, they can also look at whether a casino's policy is identifying problem gamblers. This may include describing a range of indicators for identifying potential problem gamblers, such as intensity and frequency of play, and frequency of ATM visits. Mr Speaker, this is a poorly constructed bill that is simply superfluous. We on this side of the House oppose it. We believe in quality legislation for the people, families and communities of our country. I oppose this bill.
I call the honourable member.